Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Five-1 Speedway Show. The last episode was a good one. We had up-and-coming youngster Drew Kemp on the show. Very good, interesting insight to how his season was and also his plans for the future. A very screwed on head on those shoulders there. Tonight, my guest is a guy who was a Wolverhampton fan, still is a Wolverhampton fan. He now lives in America. He's done so much for American Speedway over the last 10, 12 years. He promotes, he organises, joint team manages, does everything, I think, apart from ride the bikes. Please welcome to the show, Steve Evans.
How you doing?
Pretty good, mate. Pretty good. Not a bad little intro there for yourself. I think I've got everything right.
That's great. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me, so thank you.
Oh, well, I'm always nice. I'm always nice on this show. So, how's things been in America for 2020 then?
Well, depends on how you look at it. As far as the States, we've been in various stages of lockdown and restrictions since March, like everywhere else. America is interesting because you have different states and different cities have different rules. So you may have an area with a lot of cases that's not so restricted, and an area with not so many cases that's very restricted. So it has its frustrations, but we're still here, so that's good.
Oh yeah, that's the best. And as long as you're in good health and your family's all in good health, that's the main thing nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the speedway season over here, I mean, I've been lucky where Paris Raceway, which is my main venue these days, we got shut down in March, like everywhere else. And then as restrictions slowly lifted, we were allowed to practice beginning the middle of May, and we started racing at the end of June. And we've basically caught up any of our lost dates. And so this is a different kind of venue because most places in America run a weekly or sort of weekly season. Like Industry Hills runs every Wednesday night. It's a short season they have for 3 months. Costa Mesa runs, about twice a month for about 5 months. And we run year round. In fact, we're kind of interesting because our close season, or as the Americans would say, off season, is actually in the summer. And whilst it's true, whilst England is so cold and wet and frozen, you can't run, November through February.
Yeah.
In Paris, it's so hot, we don't run in July and August. Except for this year we did, because unfortunately we're the only track that's done a regular schedule in California. And we just ran in July and August, just because no one else was. And when I arrived to the track for the August race, I checked my temperature gauge on my car and it said 111 degrees. I'm thinking, shit, I'm people racing in this, what am I doing? But it did cool off to about 101 for the start of the races. And I think the riders had no concern because being from here, they're used to riding motorcycles in hot weather. But, that's what we had to contend with there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great that you managed to catch up with all your schedule. I mean, I looked up on speedwaybikes.com and they had the schedule from, obviously, you ran up until March and May, and then obviously, like I said, you got shut down and then reopened again for practice. And then, was it July you had a meeting? July, August? Was it
Late June.
Late June.
Yeah, the 26th of June or something like that was when we started. We did 3 practice sessions, and because we are running without spectators now, so that beggars the question, how do you pay the bills? And as you know from when you came over here a few times and raced, America riders pay an entry fee to race. Yeah. Everybody, I guess there's no free lunch in American Speedway, unfortunately, but, everyone pays to race. You pay an entrance fee, and if you bring a mechanic, they pay a fee into the track. So whilst we haven't had spectator money, we have had sponsor money, and we've had, T-shirt sale money, and we've had rider entries. So the way that we made it work is we've when you're the only place to race, obviously riders want to race, so you get a good rider turnout. And so whilst the extra riders hasn't paid for the missing spectators, it has brought in enough money to pay the bills, and so we've kept it going, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah, and like you said, when I came over there, I understand how it works and everything, and it's completely different to obviously how it is in Europe, because obviously the guys in Europe just turn up to the track and get paid, whereas in America, you pay an entry fee, it goes into a pot normally, and then it's split between all the riders afterwards. But obviously, like you said, this year having the rider entry has actually probably saved your track and everything else for this year, really, plus the addition of t-shirt sales, program sales, and everything else in between. But I mean, how many sort of riders do you normally have, like pre-COVID did you have, and what did you have like after COVID and when restrictions were lifted?
That's a great question, and it really fits in with how we're making this work. Typically, you'd get about 40 riders to a meeting before COVID, and they'd be split between various classes. You'd normally have 10 to 12 in Division 1, which, just for anyone who doesn't follow American Speedway, Division 1 is probably something like mid-championship level to upper National League level. That's Division 1. And then you have Division 2, which is National League mid to MDL level. And then you have Division 3, which is just guys riding for fun. And if you can slide the bike, it's a bonus. So that's the main speedway classes. Plus, we have classes for juniors. We have a 250cc class, a 150cc class for kids. The 250s are 12 to 15. 150s are about 7 to 11. And then we have little 50cc Pee-wee bikes for the really young kids. We've had kids as young as 4 doing that. Sidecars. So a typical meeting, you'd run 30-something races over 2.5 hours with about 40 bikes. And what you're running there is a show it's a whole evening of entertainment, and starts at 7, it's over by 9:30, and the fans come and pay their entrance fee. Now, because we don't have fans, I think our last race we had 85 riders at it.
Whoa.
Yeah, 85 riders, and we have opened the door to a couple of non-speedway classes. Actually, we have 3 non-speedway classes. We have a class for flat track bikes. We have a class for what's called hooligans, which are flat track bikes, the Harley Davidson Indian road bikes with flat track tires thrown on them. That's really a growing thing over here. That's getting big. And we have a class for pit bikes, and that runs on what's called a TT track, where you run part of the oval and then you go into the infield and there's a jump.
Okay.
It's not quite motocross, but it's a cross between. So, having those classes, plus we get more speedway riders than typical. The shows have been running extremely long. But of course, when you're running when there's no audience in attendance, you're not really restricted. If I ran this show in non-COVID times, I'd probably lose my crowd after about 3 hours. There's only, the hardcore would stay. But if you're just a local checking it out, I think after 3 hours of races, you'd probably say, okay, I'm done, But I think the last race ran about 5 hours and 1 minute. That's what it ran. And we had a few, we had 70 races in total. And I guess you could compare it to the stuff that, it's more than we'd like, but you could compare it to the amateur meetings that they do at Scunthorpe. They seem to get a lot of races in a few hours. And as one set of bikes leaves the track, the next set of bikes is already going to the tapes. It's run on very crisp basis. And we could have run it much quicker, but we had a few guys went down, a couple of minor injuries. Starting gate decided to give us some trouble, 10, 15 minutes to get that in check. So we could have done it fine, but the interesting thing with the last race is it ran 70 heats and we didn't have to do any track prep. We didn't touch the track. We didn't drag it. We didn't blade it. We watered it a couple of times, but that was it. And so track just was packed down hard, and it just held up with our weather.
Well, that's good to hear, because obviously the less breaks you have in between, everything keeps rolling, the whole show keeps going forward, and things like that. And of course, the couple of times that I've been to Paris myself and everything, the track there is beautiful, beautiful to ride and all that and that sort of thing. It's a very good little setup there, and so let's go back to how you managed to get yourself into the sort of the American speedway scene. So what made you decide to uproot the UK then and basically come over to California?
Well, I'd lived 26 years in the UK, is the short answer to that. I've been looking to move out to the States for a while. I found a company, found a job that sponsored me. I went straight from school to work. It wasn't necessarily a plan, but it just happened. So I started my first job about a month or two after I turned 17, and I worked for the phone company. I worked for BT for 9 years, various jobs. It was all right, but I saw myself maybe there for the rest of my life. And that prospect scared me a bit. So I thought I'm going to do something a little wild and crazy. So the whole of 1997, which you were probably young or not even around then. I don't know how old you are.
I was a youngster back then.
Okay, good. The whole of 97 was spent basically planning this whole move. And I came out to California in September of that year just to literally interview with about 10 different companies and be a bit of a tourist, and found one place that took me on, and then took the plunge and moved January 28th, 1998, just jumped on a plane and thought, well, worst thing is, if it doesn't work out, I can jump on another plane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I'm still here, so it must have worked out fine. So.
Well, that's good. Like I say, do something a bit crazy, do something out of the blue, more than anything. Yeah. But so how does the speedway got integrated into your life? Was you, like I say, a Wolverhampton sort of fan or a Midlands sort of fan?
Yeah, I started going to my first match in England was in 1984. It was Wolves. It was Wolves versus Bellevue, and my dad was a Speedway fan. My mom and dad were Speedway fans in the 60s, and stopped going when they had kids. It was just not, time and money, I suppose. They stopped going. So when I was 5 years old, we went to watch car racing on short circuits. Like what you have at Eastbourne and Ipswich, the hot rod race. Yeah. We were really into hot rod racing then. That was our thing. And my dad would watch a bit of Speedway on TV and would try to get me to watch it with him. And I'm like, nah, this is boring. Like, there's hot rod racing, there's 30 cars in a race. This has just got 4 bikes. It's only 4 laps, So he tried and I wasn't interested. Well, after probably years of trying, I went down to Monmouth with him on that Monday. I think it was like April 84, just after Wolves had reopened after being closed for a few years. And watching it live was like, wow, this is like cool stuff. The Wolves' number 1 rider was an American, Dennis Sigalos, and he was number 3 in the world at the time or something. And he scored a 12-point maximum and then won the second half meeting. And this guy just blew my mind. So that was the first connection to California, was watching Dennis and Robert Fetzing race for Wolverhampton. So a few weeks later, we went back, and I think, interestingly enough, Wolves were racing Eastbourne that night. And on the Eastbourne team was Bobby Schwartz, who, of course, still rides over here at 64 years old. So we won again against Eastbourne, and I was really getting interested and into it. And then a week or two later, Dennis was racing at Long Beach in the American final, World Championship qualifying round, and he fell and broke his leg. And that was pretty much the end of his career. He came back a bit for Ipswich, but was never the same. So after Dennis got injured, my dad said, you want to go? I'm like, nah, I don't want to go. If he's not racing, I'm not interested. So he kind of spent a decade trying to get me to go to Speedway, and then within 2 meetings, it was lost because Dennis got injured. And then, so then towards the end of 86, we decided to go again. And then Wolves number one was Sam Ermolenko.
Yep.
And it was Sam. The Wolves team then was Sam, 5 Danish riders, and 1 Brit. And the meeting we went to was a Wolves Cradley Heath local derby in the annual Wolves Trophy. And this, even though I enjoyed it before, this being a local derby took it to a whole new level. So it wasn't a case of, because after the first time in '84, it was like, okay, let's go again. We waited maybe a month or two and went again. This was like, can we go next week? Can we go next week? And from there, I don't think I missed a home match in a decade from that first meeting. And we started going away, and, you know, and it really became a way of life for the whole family. You know, my mom and dad, my brother, we would just go and follow the team. And this was just what we did, you know, and so that's the beginnings. And then, so that was 86. I probably tailed off a bit, you know, in the year or two before I moved. Other interests came in and I wasn't going so much. But then in 98, you know, you make a move to California and it sounds great. And it is. It is. But the bottom line is the first few weeks there are pretty rough because you're, you know, I'd be leaving work, and on Saturday night I'd be going around the supermarket shopping, thinking, what time is it in England? It's 1 o'clock. My mates will all be pissed, or they'll be having a curry now, or they'll be in a club talking to girls, and here's me like deciding which ham to buy for my sandwiches. You know, it's like, it's not all the glamour it's meant to be. Yeah. So the point there is about 6 weeks after I moved, there was a meeting at Costa Mesa. And so I went to that meeting. It's quite a shock, as you know, to get to Costa Mesa, seeing how small the track is. The track's tiny. It's like 150 yards. It's like what they used to do at Brighton or something, or the old Eastbourne training track. But the meeting had lots of familiar riders because it was the first week of March. So the guys that were going to Europe were in the meeting, and they were literally going to get on a plane the next day and come to England for the season. So Greg and Billy were in that meeting, and there was just a ton of riders like Chris Manchester, Josh Larson, Mike Faria, Bobby Schwartz, tons of guys I'd seen, you know, as a kid or a teenager in various stages racing were over here. So it was honestly, it was that night at Costa Mesa that settled me into America, because whilst everything else in life was new, there was one place I could go that was a link back to my life before, which was Costa Mesa Speedway. So I would go there, not every race, because it was the same race format, it was the same riders, same race format every week, but I'd go, you know, at least once a month, and it was my link back to my previous life, if you like, while I settled into everything else. So
yeah, that's pretty cool to hear that. Obviously, like you say, it's a complete different way of life. I mean, the short time I spent there on holiday and things like that, you know, it is completely different. And I must admit, I did the similar thing to what you did. Look at the clock. All right, what time is it back at home? You know, it's like I think I was over there, for the British Grand Prix was on one weekend. Oh, yeah. I think I watched the semi-final and the final online, and then I thought, oh right, okay, then I'll go to bed now. Oh wait, no, it's like middle of the afternoon here, and I'm washing my bikes down and everything, and you know, it's a complete culture shock. Whereas everyone, like you said, would be in the club, getting pissed, doing whatever. You know, it's just
especially at Cardiff.
Oh yeah, especially at Cardiff, yeah. But it is crazy.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to say nothing. But
yeah. Right.
But I mean, you know, it's good to hear that going to Costa Mesa was that little link that you needed just to get yourself settled. But like you said, even those riders you just listed there, you know, it's a big lineup, and of course, like you said, it's only 30 races at Costa Mesa, something like that, on a weekly basis, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, well, Costa Mesa, and you know, runs an event that's for the spectators. So it's a short show. I mean, they don't do 5-hour marathons, but you know, but unfortunately, Costa Mesa and City of Industry, as you know, are both great venues. Costa Mesa is the iconic home of American Speedway. Always, you know, whether it stays here forever, it's the home of American Speedway. It's probably American Bellevue, because Bellevue is just its history, you know. So even though they don't really win much these days, they've got their history at Bellevue. Sorry, mates in Manchester. And then industry is this tremendous state-of-the-art facility with a roof over the top of it and a question arena with video screens and just all of the trimmings. But neither of those tracks could run this year at all. Well, industry did their Gumball Rally weekend in February, which is like a junior speedway festival, which was about a month before COVID hit. But neither venue ran, and part of it is because they need. I don't think they could make it pay the way that I do, because they just with kind of bigger and nicer arenas, they have more overhead than I do. So the way that I make it work wouldn't work for them. And the other thing is, Costa Mesa is on a state-owned fairgrounds owned by the state of California. Industry is on the equestrian center owned by the city of Industry. And so I think if you're on a government-owned property, it's probably less, it's going to be more red tape and more restrictions to get started than being at Paris Raceway, where it's a privately owned motorsports park, which has its motocross tracks on one side and its flat track and speedway on the other side. You know, we still had to jump through hoops to get racing, and it was really talking to the right people in the city of Industry, the city of Paris, just to explain what we're doing and how we're doing it, and that it wouldn't be any health risk. You know, it'd be like going to a golf course that's open or something like that, you know. So once we presented our plan to them, they were very cooperative and gave us a green light.
Yeah, and like you said, because obviously Industries indoors, it is the sort of like the 21st century speedway track, really indoors. Like I said, video screens, everything, all the trimmings, and obviously Costa Mesa is the home of Californian speedway, you know, and everything else. It is a shame that those two venues weren't able to run. But all in all the guys must have loved it when you turn around and said, yep, Paris is running, these are the dates, and all that sort of thing. Was the sort of like the motocross track and things like that and other things in the Paris sort of motor park able to run as well, or was it just the speedway that ran?
Both ran and both still do. The motocross tracks open most days for practice, and they run races there, you know, I think every couple of weeks or something. But it was just going through different stages, because the first stage of reopening was when outdoor leisure facilities open, like golf courses, we could open. But, you know, the first practice was weird because riders weren't allowed to bring mechanics. So it was just the rider alone. So it kind of begs the question, well, what if you fall down and break a bone? I could drive someone, I could put them in the boot of my car and drive them to the gate of the track and have someone them and take them, you know. But we work, and then the mechanics thing relaxed a bit, so you know we could do the second practice with guests, and then it relaxed further when it was when the allowance came to run professional sports, was when we could run speedway races, and we're obviously not like the NBA or the NFL, but we do fit under the same category, so we could run from that point.
Oh, that's interesting to hear about the, like say, the mechanic situation more than anything, because like you said, someone falls off and gets hurt, you're screwed. You know, you can't do anything. But I guess that was because that's the whole sort of numbers thing and the infection rates and all that sort of thing. It's just being careful more than anything.
Yeah. Well, again, part of the thing that happens in this COVID era is rules get put into place, but they're not always logical. I mean, I think if you're playing a round of golf and you don't have a caddy, you can probably get by and carry your own golf clubs. But, you know, a speedway bike is not a set of golf clubs, but we'll kind of be in the same way to begin with. So.
Yeah. But in the end, everything was sorted out and you managed to get a lot of racing in a short space of time, like many of the guys did in Europe this year more than anything. So going back to, again, your beginnings, and of course now you're in California and everything, how did you become sort of promoter of Paris Speedway then?
Well, it all started with this thing called the American Dream Team that began in 2005.
Mm.
There was it, this was back in the day before social media, and there was an email group you just subscribe to, and you get emails about American Speedway. You could make posts, and people would get your posts, and so it was a discussion board. And there was at that point, I'd got talking to a guy, Gary Gomez, who had, at that point, his son was about 12, 13 years old, doing well in junior speedway. And through the forum, I think I must have revealed my true colors and that I was British, you know. So Gary would message me because he was talented and ambitious and obviously wanted to, you know, set a future where maybe he'd make it into the British leagues. So through our discussions and through phone call meetings, we came up with an idea because it was quite clear that the standard of American Speedway had declined over the years. Back when I was like look at this in the late 1980s, early 1990s, you had someone like Billy Hamill or Chris Manchester came to England, and in their first season in a top league, much stronger than what it is now, averaged 8 points a night. 8 points a night in your first season, and you've been racing tracks half the size of British tracks your whole life, and you jump onto these big tracks that you've never seen before with different weather and different food and different track surfaces and average 8 points. That's unbelievable. But that was the late 80s, 90s. Roll it forward to the 2000s, American Speedway had gone through a decline where it was literally down to one track down south, which was Costa Mesa. The other tracks had closed for various reasons, finances, or that old thing about building houses, which kills plenty of speed tracks, unfortunately. And there was a point in time where I think it was down to insurance issues where Costa Mesa could not run junior speedway, so you couldn't start racing until you were 16. And those junior classes were what it was all about to really, you know, Hamill, Hancock, Manchester, Josh Larson, they all came through junior speedway. They were racing every week when they were like 9 and 10 years old. And so by the time they were 16, they were ready. So that was gone. So over time, the American standard had declined. And in fact, I think Billy Hamill said at one time, we skipped a generation. You know, there was a whole, I think at one point in time, the youngest rider at Costa Mesa was Chris Manchester, who was 25. There wasn't anybody under 25 racing. And then a few kids, 16-year-olds came about, and that's where it came back. So because of that, you had this, you know, part of the reason why these older riders in America kept racing, it was really simple. There weren't younger guys that could beat them. So you had guys running into their late 40s, even 50s, that were still winning meetings, and the kids couldn't beat them. So of course, it makes logical sense that if you're not beating the 50-year-old American veteran, you're not going to go to England and make it on a team. You're just not good enough. So Gary and I came up with this idea of the dream team, and this was where we would take. This was when we did have some youngsters coming through a few years later, and we'd take a team of them to England, race at National League level, and give the kids some experience. You know, let them see what it's all about. Let them see if they can make the standard, and see if it's really what they want to do. Because, you know, just because you think you want to do it doesn't mean that you really want to put in the work. So the first Dream Team Tour was 2005, and as a consequence of practicing at various places, you know, then I took the promotion end of it on myself and was promoting at a track in a place called Victorville for 7 years. And then from Victorville moved on to other venues, Ventura, and now Paris. So that's I actually had Paris, at one point I had 3 tracks going at the same time. I had Victorville, Paris, and I think Ventura. Paris, then Greg Hancock's sister took Paris over. You know, she was, I guess, my right arm at the track, did a bunch of work with me. And workload got a bit too much for me. And, the track owner, the track owner decided to approach Carrie Hancock, and she ran it for a couple of years. But we were both struggling with getting enough riders out there. So then she stopped doing it. And then when the San Bernardino track closed down, I jumped in, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years ago and started it up again. And it's been going from strength to strength ever since. So we found a plan that made it work, and that's really running year round, because the American main season is very short. It starts in May and it wraps in September. It's like a 5-month season. So we tend to run less during that time, and we run at least once a month during the winter, autumn and spring, because, there's nowhere else to race. And the weather's, we have our cold season and our wet season, but it's not like yours.
No, it's not. No, it's not. You have more sunshine than we have, and everything else, apart from, like I say, the cold and the wet. But no, it is really interesting to hear that sort of side of it, because I remember the newer Dream Team, shall we say, that came over in 2005, because I was doing second halves at Sittingbourne and Wimbledon and places like that, and I remember seeing them down at Sittingbourne when it was, I think, Chris Kerr was in the team.
That was 05, that was the first year.
Yeah, I remember seeing them boys, and I can't remember who else was in the team. It was so long ago, but I remember them coming over with their Troy Lee design motocross gear they had on, all the same colours, and they actually won at Sittingbourne, I think, by 2 points. I think it was something like that. Yeah. But it was like, these new kids who were so friendly. I mean, you could stand in the pits, and I rode after the meeting anyway, and they would just come up to you and talk to you, and like, they didn't care who you were, they would talk to you. And of course, that's how my sort of fondness for the Americans and all that sort of thing came into it, because they were so nice. Like, okay, these guys are pretty laid back and pretty cool. They don't care if they win, lose, or draw. They have to just go and ride their bikes. So, but yeah, I mean, that paved the way again. For I think a year or two later, Chris Kerr came over and rode. I think Wolverhampton, wasn't it? And then he rode Premier League for several clubs, and so he was sort of like.
He was a red car first, yeah.
Yeah. And
he started at Red Car, then went to Birmingham and did some races at Wolves too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I say he was sort of like the first one of the new sort of breed to go over and take the plunge after Billy Gennaro and Ryan Fisher. Well, because they were the ones before that who came over, and things like that. But of course, Billy J still rides now and still wins everything I see on Facebook and everything else. He's still riding strong. But yeah, a lot of these kids came over. Of course, the Dream Team kept coming over. I think, wasn't it, you had Eddie Castro come over one time, and you had Sean McConnell come over as well, and all people like that. So
youngsters, yeah.
Yeah, the cream of the crop. Yeah, these kids.
Yeah.
But
young Eddie and young Sean.
Oh yeah, they're still young at heart. Those two. But it must have been nice for you to sort of like get these kids out there and hopefully sort of give them a foot in the door, really, for British League. It's a shame that some of those kids didn't stay on though, more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Kerr was probably the most successful rider from the Dream Team. I think he did 5 or 6 years and would have done more, but he had an injury. He broke his leg, and unfortunately, what happened was, I think it was 2010. He was riding for Birmingham. Birmingham had this brilliant team, and he was averaging 9 points from his first few meetings. And then he broke his leg, but because he was probably only a 6-point rider from before, I think he was with this average, and I don't know that anyone would have taken him on a 9-point average. So he was kind of the old victim of your success with British Speedway averages. So Chris Kerr did his time. Aaron Fox did a year at Edinburgh. He did a Dream Team tour. Tyson Burmeister did a year at Wolves. There might have been 1 or 2 others. I mean, it was a great project, and it was a lot of fun. And for us too, you say about the American riders being very approachable. We found the British fans were just amazing, because I think, you have these old guys with program boards getting autographs, and I think they were there when America was ruling the world. Yeah. And now we're not. But just to see some young kids gave them some hope of these days coming back. And, but the whole Dream Team thing kind of got wound down for a couple of reasons. One was when Billy Hamill, Doug Nickel, and Martin Hagen did the academies, the junior academies, that they're actually coaching the riders and raising their standards in America. With tracks like Paris and Ventura, a European size. So when the guys come to Europe, they're no longer all at sea.
Yeah.
And but most importantly, I think when I got involved with the Speedway World Cup, there was really, that's where the dream team got kind of put on the back burner a bit, because there wasn't really time to do both. We did a tour or two where I did the legwork here, and our crew in England ran it for me, so to speak, but it was kind of a bit bumpy, I think. It wasn't, and then on the last one, we just couldn't get enough riders on it. So, we never officially pulled the plug on it. I mean, we could bring it back at any point, and we might do that at some point, but Speedway World Cup kind of, fair to say, took over my life for a few years. It was my absolute obsession, and they brought it back, it probably would be again.
Yeah, I can imagine so, because looking back at some of the stuff I did before this interview was that obviously America made the World Team Cup in 2007 when they were at Coventry in the qualifying, which was good to see after several years out. Unfortunately, they weren't in it again until you guys re-qualified again. I think it was 2012, around about that sort of time you re-qualified again. 2012,
yeah. And the story behind the World Cup was, it was the American team in the mid 2000s kind of fell out of favor a bit, and honestly, there wasn't really anybody running the team. There were individuals that were putting it together, but one of them was Greg Hancock's manager, Richard Child. The other one was Dave Joyner from Fast Friday Speedway. But these were, it's fair to say, these were very busy guys with everything else they had going on in Speedway. So I think it was a case of, oh, it's the World Team Cup in a month, let's see who we can get on the team. It wasn't very well organized. Nothing on their abilities, because they're both super able guys, but like I found with doing the Dream Team and World Cup, there's only so many hours in the day you can do this, So when I got involved, it was on the back of one of my Dream Team crew members, a guy in Cradley called Andy Hale. I think it was 2011, and the US, I think we went to Italy to try to qualify. This was the year before I got involved, and we missed qualifying by a few points, and a lot of people in America were quite excited. Oh, we came so close, that's great. I was pissed off because we didn't track the best team we could. We didn't have Ken Eagles was not on the team, and he was racing in Europe at the time. So I was like, well, why wasn't he on the team? And I think it was a bit of a miscommunication. He was coming back from injury. So, and my thought was, Kenny, there was one rider on the team scored 0 points, was not really ready for the World Cup. He was like a Dream Team rider, and Kenny was, I think Kenny on that same night went and scored 14 points at Workington. So, I was pissed off. So I spoke to Andy, and Andy's like, well, why don't you try and run it yourself? I'm like, that's a great idea. So I called up the American Motorcyclist Association, that's our sanctioning body. And, I know some of the guys there not well. And I just said to them, who's running the Speedway, who's running the World Cup team? And they said, well, we kind of don't know. We don't really have someone. We have Richard, but he's in Europe, and he helps us put it together. But it's fair to say that he's got a lot of other stuff on his plate. So I said, well, let me run it. Here's my qualifications. I've done 7 tours to England with the Dream Team and the touring team. So, this is different, but let me tell you what I can do. And AMA being a kind of, a corporate sanctioning organization, kind of took their time over this, went back and forth on it, and we'll call us next week. Okay, next week. Yeah, call us in another week. And we'll next month. Well, we've been busy. I'm thinking this is never going to happen. And then towards the end of 2011, they called me and said, okay, Steve, let's move forward. I'm like, great, let's move forward. And then they said, we're going to form a committee. I'm like, oh, no. That's because my experience of a committee is they talk a lot and don't do much, and
Yeah.
we kind of had a bit of that going on. But luckily for the American team, when they brought up committee, I called Billy Hamill and said, "Hey, Billy, you want to be on this committee? It's going to look at national championships and World Cup." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be on it," because that's when he was doing the academies.
Yeah.
So I brought Billy in the committee, and though there were other members of the committee, it was really the two of us that made the World Cup happen. I was expecting the committee members to kind of give more input and blueprint, but it's probably good that they didn't, because we could just do our own thing on it. And so we entered in 2012, and the goal was one thing and one thing only. We considered that had we tracked our best possible team in 2011, we would have made it to the TV stages. That was our goal. So because that didn't happen in 2011, it's like we were determined that wherever we had to go, whatever country we were drawn in, we were going to get to the TV stages, and we did. We made our goal, and from there we never fell out of the TV stages for the next 6 years until they replaced the World Cup with Speedway of Nations. So that's something that we and I are very proud of, that we got ourselves back to be an undisputed top 9 Speedway nation.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, you stayed in it. America held its own. With Greg at the helm. Near enough until he, like I said, until he basically stopped riding. Greg was the number one and the spearhead, but the bottom end was mainly built up with kids in mind. I know Billy Gennaro did it a few times and things like that. And then you saw Gino Manzara's come over, Max Rummel, Dylan Rummel, Brock Nickel and Luke Becker are now, and they're the sort of riders who now are good enough to be on the world stage, especially Luke Becker and Brock Nickel, because it's proven this year and it proved last year as well, especially at the Speedway of Nations.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say when you have Greg Hancock on your team, you have an advantage, because it was interesting, Speedway World Cup is probably one of the worst financial events for a rider to do. It just doesn't pay well. And we had to we probably raised about 20 grand a year just to make it so that people didn't lose money on this. I mean, no one walked away with pockets full of cash, but we raised the money because our expenses were also higher, because we were the only team that were bringing riders from a different continent to race in the competition. Everybody else had their full team in England or in continental Europe. We had to bring 1 or 2 guys each year, find them equipment, find them mechanics, have them places to stay. The bills just add up ridiculously with the Speedway World Cup. So you have Greg, who I have no idea what these guys truly make in Poland and Sweden, but Greg being a top rider and with good sponsorships and stuff, obviously did good out of Speedway and deserved it. But racing the World Cup, it was not, there was no real money on the line for him, but he gave some of the best performances of a magnificent career, putting on that Stars and Stripes race bib. And, he definitely led the team, but you can't qualify on just one person's points. So the first year we went to Slovenia and had to qualify. We were against Slovenia, Ukraine, and Italy. And it was a tough meeting, but we made it through. We won by, I think, 4 points. Zagar was on fire for the Slovenians. I think he got 19 on the night, but we had enough. I think Greg got 14. A couple of guys got, I think everyone else got about 12 or something. Billy, Ricky, Ryan. We ended up with 44 points. So, it'll all somewhat add up from that. But we made enough points to make it through. Then went to Poland. We came 4th in Poland, kind of expected. But we gave our best performance, but that was a yardstick. We could get through a qualifier, but we couldn't get through. But we couldn't get through Poland, and we weren't really expecting to be honest with you. Then the following year, in 2013, the FIM, in their scheduling wisdom, scheduled us to race a qualifier in Hungary on a bank holiday Monday, the weekend of the Prague GP. So Greg had Prague on Saturday, Poland Sunday, Sweden on Tuesday, with this race in Hungary in between. You know, this is where the schedule of the riders comes in. And we looked and looked and looked and looked at flights and looked at miles and looked at travel, and it was impossible. There was absolutely no way Greg Hancock could make that meeting. So we kind of contacted the FIM and said, hey, you've given us this schedule and we can't have our top rider. Well, it was like, sorry guys, that's the schedule. So we then had to go to Hungary. We had Ricky and Ryan. Ingalls at that point, unfortunately, had got injured and was his kind of speedway time was done. Sadly, he got bad injuries in a crash at Workington, you know, back in end of 2012. So we had no Kenny. We had Ricky and Ryan. We brought Gino over, who had only raced on the Dream Team before, and we got Billy Gennaro back, and we had to go to Hungary with those 4 riders to qualify against the Hungarians, the Italians, and the French. And the meeting didn't start well. You know, we were behind. Italy were just on fire. We didn't expect them to be, but they were just on fire. And we were just kind of bumbling along. Gennaro's bike failed. Gino came last. I think Ricky had a win, Ryan had a second, but we were like only on 5 points. And Billy and I looked at each other, and after the first round, I'm like, shit, this is not good. I guess, are we really a one-man team and he's not here? Yeah. But in the second and third rounds, a fire was lit, and these guys just started winning races. And we ended up winning that meeting. So for 2 years in a row, we qualified through the qualifiers. And that night was one of the most proud performances I can say, because, you know, it's one thing to do it with Greg Hancock carrying the team. It's another thing to do it with no Greg Hancock there, you know. But of course, the cynics would say, well, you're only against the Hungarians and the Italians, you know, it's not like a TV round. And they're right. But then a couple of months later, we came back for the TV rounds, and we were at King's Lynn. And I wrote about this in the Speedway Star a few weeks ago, you know, this night. But we're at King's Lynn. I think we had, of course, we had the Brits. I think the Danes were there and the Swedes were there. And the Swedes had some injuries. The Swedes were tracking a B team because their entire first team of Lindgren, Lindback, Peter Carlson were all injured. Every single one of them was injured. So they had I think they had Peter Lundgren, Jonas Davidson. I mean, they still had Nurmark. They had a good team. It was much better on paper than ours. Yeah. And we were after 12 heats, we're in last place, and heads were going down in the pits. And Greg Hancock gave this kind of motivational talk to the team. Greg and Billy Hamill gave this motivational talk to the team, which was absolutely astounding. It lifted them out of their misery of coming third or last, and it wasn't working out, you know. And so then after the interval, we started picking up points. And I think around heat 14 or 15, we dropped the bomb, which was Greg's Joker ride. And, you know, you think Greg Hancock on a Joker, it's a safe bet he's going to win, but it isn't, because, you know, you have guys like Ty Wuffenden, Nicky Pedersen in that meeting. It's not a guarantee. But one of my roles in the team was the Joker ride. And before the meeting, we had 3 heats singled out where Greg could do the Joker. Billy and I met with Greg, and we were going over, it was a very scientific approach. Now, we were looking at things like who you're up against, what gate you were coming out of, because my job as the strategy guy of the team was to basically give Greg Hancock the best chance to get 6 points from his Joker ride. So Greg goes out on his Joker ride, wins it. So suddenly we're ahead of the Swedes, who are struggling. Next race is Greg's program ride. He wins it again. So we suddenly went from being, 4 or 5 points down to 4 or 5 points up on Sweden. It was like a hammer blow. And just like heads were going down in the first part of the meeting before the team talk, then the Swedes' heads went down and they literally collapsed from that point, and we started picking up points, and we came third place and we qualified, which was completely unexpected. I think it was a Monday night in King's Lynn, and we had to be in Prague within 2 days, and we didn't have airfares or a van, or we had nothing. So then, next day my job was to just work out how to get everybody there, without the credit card bouncing, so we did. And then we went to Prague in the race-off and came second. It was one of the closest meetings. I think all of the teams were only separated by 5 or 6 points by the end of it. But Australia won. We came second. I think it was the Brits and the Latvians were third and fourth. So that year we were 5 points off making the final. And I always argue that we were really finalists that year because that was when it was in Prague, and the Czechs only scored like 10 points in the final. They were seeded as the home team. I get it. That's how it goes. But we were really on fire, and that was probably the greatest World Cup experience for Team USA. Probably closely followed by 2017 when we tracked a young team without Greg. Without I think 3 of the team had no British experience. We had Ricky, Gino, Brock, Luke, and Dylan Rummel. That was our team. And again, we beat the Czechs at King's Lynn and qualified for the race-off, which was ridiculous. I mean, we had 3 guys racing at Leszno in the race-off that had never raced in Europe before. We had 1 guy, Gino, that wasn't on a team that year. We only had 1 guy with league experience, and we qualified for the race-off and came 7th in the world with a team of kids. That was pretty cool too.
Yeah, because that was the thing, wasn't it? You came to Kent and you came to Mildenhall to give the boys a bit of track time and get their bike styled in. But that year was good because obviously that was the Leszno meeting was the famous Luke Becker race win. The only race win the Americans got all night, but it was great. It set him onto a benchmark for the following year. So, but looking back at some of the things that Team USA you guys managed to do. I mean, one year I think you finished second in the qualifier at King's Lynn, pipping Australia by a point. I think, wasn't it? One year you upset them one year, and you think, Jesus Christ, these guys are going to be a force to reckon with in a few years' time, and it's now proving that. I think in the next 3-4 years you're going to have 2 or 3 guys who are going to set the world on fire, plus the kids coming off the 250s onto the 500s who've got a bit of talent, like Sebastian Palmisi. You've got Wilbur Hancock. You've got and several other kids who are absolutely carving it up out there.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's unfortunate during the World Cup that we never quite developed enough to make the final. We kind of seem to have reached the level of always made the race off, but we're never going to win it, so to speak. And it really would have taken, I guess, the guys like Ricky, Ryan, and Gino to have improved further than they did and had good meetings to make that happen. It's tough because you're against, sometimes you're against an Australian team or a British team or a Danish team with 3 GP riders in it. And, our team had some very good league riders in it, but there is a difference. So now it's a whole new era now because, and I guess the 2017 World Cup, which by the way, I think we only did well because of your mechanical skills for the team at Kent and Mildenhall. Thanks for giving in with us there.
Well,
But it was, yeah, exactly. But if you recall, because in 2016, Lance King became the team manager. Billy had done 3 years, and really with everything else going on, it was a kind of, I think for Billy Hamill, it was it was your head and your heart and really looking at, well, because the Speedway World Cup, when you're running it from America, it takes so much time out of your life. you know, and you, unlike make any money from doing it, we don't get paid for doing it. So we have to go to work. We have to take care of our families.
Yeah.
And, you know, and outside we have the thing that we do that can sometimes take on a daily basis as many hours as it takes going to work. You know, it's tough. So Billy did 3 good years as team manager. And then on Greg Hancock's recommendation, Lance King became involved, and we met and worked out how to work together. And so that first year we went to Sweden for our round, and we got through, but it was one of those nights where it was, you know, Greg carried us through. It was the rest of the guys really struggled. And then we got to the race off at Bellevue, and that race at Sweden was Greg's last ever Team USA World Cup appearance. He did do Speedway of Nations the first year, but that was his last World Cup appearance because we went to Bellevue and we did something controversial where we sat down Greg and Ricky Wells and put in Luke Becker and Brock Nickel. And I mean, the main reason that we did that, you know, it was a mutual decision. It was Greg was involved and Lance and I. The main reason that we did that is we knew from the get-go, even with Greg and Ricky and the team, we were not going to win the race-off. We were not going to win it. So we figured have Greg get us through the first meeting, because that means we don't have to qualify and go back to places like Hungary and Slovenia and get back into it. And then at Bellevue, put the kids out and give them some experience to get things set up for the following year. And of course, obviously, from a fan's perspective, when you're coming to watch and there's an American team and you find on the day that Greg Hancock's not in it, you're understandably a bit pissed off. You know, it's like, you know, you feel a bit cheated because you've paid your money. And that's unfortunate, but from our perspective, it's our job to do the best thing for American Speedway. And we felt that tracking the team that we did, we knew on the night that we were going to be a punch bag, and we were. Yeah. But we tracked the best team for American Speedway because it wasn't about 2016, it was about 2017 and beyond. And of course, though we got roasted in the press and whatever, and roasted on the internet for not having Greg in the team, one thing to point out is that we never promised Greg was going to race in that race. So any kind of press and reporters reporting that Greg Hancock was coming to Bellevue, they did so without asking us, you know. So
yeah, because obviously Greg is the main man, and everyone thinks, oh, Team USA, Greg's there straight away. And I mean, I was there at Bellevue that night, and yeah, I must admit myself, it was a bit strange hearing, oh, Greg's not doing it. But then, because I had the inside knowledge of the kids coming through, I thought, oh, okay, he's stepped back because he's given Luke Becker a chance, you know, and you know, and people like that. So, like you say, yeah, because Greg only had, I think at that time, a few more seasons left in him, really. His whole philosophy then at that time of his career was to push the kids through, give the kids the chance. You know, I've been there, done it, sort of thing. It's now their turn to take over from me, sort of thing. Yeah,
and even if Greg was, I mean, at that point we hadn't looked at 2017 because we didn't know. First thing is, you don't know where you're racing until they tell you where you're racing. So it was not that Greg was not going to do 2017, but part of where we were stagnating a bit was, you know, you look at the score sheets and it's like Greg, 18 points, next rider, 5. You know, we kind of need to be doing more to develop, so you'd have some more backup for Greg, or you can do it without him. And the following year, as we just discussed, we were at Kings Lynn without Greg, and we beat the Czech team, and part of it was because everybody stepped up and contributed. And those warm-up matches that we did at National League level were very important because they just got the guys used to the tracks and used to the bikes. But also, too, you know, Speedway is all about form. And I think Vaclav Milik scored 2 points that night for the Czechs. He had a European round the night before, so obviously, you know, was not probably on his top bikes and came to Kingston and just didn't do well. But, you know, that's just how it is, you know. Czech team had a bad night and we had a good night and made it through to Poland. And that's funny because I said about Prague being unplanned as far as getting people there. Actually, with Prague, about a third of the team were going to Prague anyway, just to watch. Billy was going and I was going, and some of the crew were going just to experience Prague and the World Cup. So when we had to get the team to Prague within 48 hours, a bunch of us already had plane tickets and hotels, so we're just filling everybody else in.
Yeah.
With this one, with 2017, we were all booked to go home to America on the Tuesday. We had not thought of the race because we thought, we just got a team of kids here. We're just gonna have some fun and see what they can do and see how many points they can put on the board. So when they qualify, we had to cancel flights and change flights and get everybody to Poland and kind of do the same thing again. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, hats off to you guys. You took the plunge in putting the kids in, and it paid off. I'm sure if you put the kids in again, if the World Cup ever came back again, I'm sure if you put the kids in again, they would probably do the same thing again, qualify again. But the only problem is, like you said earlier, was that it's just that one more step. It's just getting to that final and getting in the top 4 in the world. That's the next sort of step. But obviously, with the Speedway of Nations, that's now taken that aback. But that's probably also helped you guys in a way, because you can still put young riders out there instead of taking a whole squad. You're only taking 3 or 4 riders with you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I simply don't like it as much. I really don't. It isn't the World Cup. It's a best pairs meeting. We have it interesting where we have there's this rule for the under 21 rider, and up until this year we had options because Luke still qualifies as an under 21 through the end of the year. Going into next year, he doesn't. So now we have a situation going into next year where we have to bring a rider over. The top 2 contenders right now is Sebastian Palmisi, who you mentioned, and a pretty fast kid from up north called Blake Barello, who's Chris Kerr's protege. He's really good. But one of those will be on the team next year, or maybe another one who's kind of knocking on the door. But they have absolutely no European experience. So the under 21 rule, I think it works good for the top nations like the Poles and because if you took the best 3 Poles, it'd be game over. If you've got Magic Janowski as your reserve rider who can come for someone off form, it's like, geez, that's crazy. The smaller nations like us, it was fine before when we had Luke and Brock, but now we've got this, I mean, it'd make much more sense to be able to track Ricky Wells, Brock Nickel, and Luke Becker, perhaps. Not that it's my call, because Lance is the team manager, makes the team selection call. But if I was in his shoes, I'd choose the 3 guys that were there. But I mean, I suppose on the other side of the coin, some of our successes has been when we've been out of the comfort zone and we've had to bring in somebody who's not got the experience. So maybe the best thing would be to, throw in a kid. I mean, I suppose he only has to run 1 heat, but, it's a bit of a way to travel to do 1 heat of Speedway,
Yeah, it is. It's a funny one, because I personally think the Speedway Nations is a good thing, but I also think that it's got room in the calendar for the World Cup within like if you had the Speedway Nations 1 week, the following week you had the World Cup, everybody still stays over for like 2 weeks. You can still have the 2 sort of championships going side and side, and it gives someone like Sebastian Palmisi, a chance to experience it. I mean, even if you could get him over here, I don't know, like for a month within the World Cup Speedway of Nations sort of pit time frame and give him the experience of European tracks, he would be your trump card at reserve possibly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, obviously, the thing that's in our favour now is that the competition comes at the end of the year. It's the qualifiers are in Latvia and the finals back at Bellevue in October. So we do have the best part of a year to get the reserve rider ready and maybe get them some racing in Europe ahead. But of course, we have to find out still. It's still quite unknown how next season is going to play out because we're still right now we're kind of undergoing second waves of viruses and stuff. So it's not exactly, we don't exactly have a plan. moving forward. We hope it all fizzles out or gets fixed, but we're still just, twiddling our thumbs waiting for instructions.
Yeah, everything for next year is a up, and yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, you've got the dates penciled in for next year, but like anything, it's going to be a huge question mark. I mean, you never know; it could happen like it did last or this year. You only had the final, and that was virtually a washout anyway. And it's going to be interesting because it's going to be at Bellevue in October. It's going to probably be a cold, wet night anyway. Even though it's on a fantastic racetrack, it's just going to be one of those sort of nights.
Yeah, though this year I think they had good weather when it was in Poland. I think Manchester was quite a nice autumn day. I think it was dry, and Poland was just a freezing cold. It's unfortunate running the competition so late. I really think they should not run it in October. But I think also, too, Speedway of Nations is, the Grand Prix is a closed circuit, whereas Speedway of Nations, you do have to have riders that travel. So I think probably doing it later in the year is the best plan as far as making sure the event happens because of the virus. But, I'm used to like nice, warm July days that we've had for the World Cup before, which were always quite pleasant to come to.
Yeah, coming to something like Kings Lynn or even Bellevue when the sun will shine and everything, it makes Speedway different. It makes it more enjoyable, But so if you look towards sort of like if 2021 is a definite go ahead, have you got sort of riders that we should be looking out for, and like if we watch on live streams or we keep up to date with it?
Well, there's, American Speedway, you can watch all of our races I'll do a little plug here, on a pay-per-view webcast on xsra.tv. That's our own channel that we have. So part of not having the fans is that we at least have the races on there. But on the positive side, we just ran the Under-21 Championship, and for the first time since 2007, we had 16 riders in the Under-21 Championship, and that was won by Luke, which was his last season as eligible for the Under-21s. Sebastian Parmisi came second. Dylan Rummel came third. We've got a lot of potential riders coming through the system right now. So there's actually a kid who came. He got 12 points in the Under-21s, came fourth place. Name is Kyle Cunningham, and he only. It was only, I think, his fifth or sixth meeting on a 500cc bike. And, I think it had 19 heats on a 500. And he was in a runoff with Dylan Rummel for third. He got the gate on Dylan. Dylan kind of reeled him in and made a pass, I think, on lap 3 with his experience. But, there's, Blake Barello, Anthony Dion, and his brother Timmy. They're from up north. So there's a lot of Under-21s, and then Wilbur Hancock's going to be stepping up next year. So in Wilbur's case, because of his Swedish mom, he's going to have opportunities where he's not going to have some of the visa issues to race in European leagues. It might not work for Britain with Brexit, but he's probably going to be coming to Europe earlier than some of our guys would. There's another kid that won our 250 class at the last race, Alex Martin. He's 16 in 16. Actually, you met them. They were twins that were in.
Yeah, I remember Alex and his brother and his dad Steve and their mum. I got to know him really well in Boyens, like you said. But watching those kids come up and about, it's only a few years ago that I remember seeing them. They were like sort of knee height to a shoulder, sort of thing on me, and now they're tall kids and they're really racing for it. And you think, geez, they've actually kept at it, and they've actually getting a lot of success from it. So again, these kids are one to watch, and I reckon that hopefully if they keep their interest and they want to come to Europe, because of course you've got hundreds of people over here who would help them out at a drop of a hat. Me being one of them, I'd help out any of them because they're all so nice to me, and it's like these kids have got the help in England, so we can give them the chance to ride over here.
Yeah, and of course that's an interesting thing that you bring up if they keep riding, because American Speedway, the challenge with American Speedway is you, as I said before, you pay entry fees to race, but you do get paid. There is prize money on offer. it's not the greatest, to be honest. It's probably somewhere. It's probably better than National League money for the winners, but not championship money. So every racer in America has a job. And I think even the top guys, what they make from it, keeps the cost of their equipment going. So no one's really making a living in American Speedway. But one of the issues we have is I've been criticized about wanting to get riders over into Europe because why don't we keep them here? Because we don't have enough riders. But I'll counter that by saying that the real problem that American Speedway has is you have these kids that come out of junior Speedway and they go into the 500 class, and by the time they reach 20 years old, they've retired. They've lost interest. And part of it might be, obviously American Speedway itself isn't doing enough to keep these guys interested. So what we need to do on the domestic scene is, if more of these kids stick with it, there'll be plenty of guys for our local races. That's important because we can't send everybody to Europe. We've never said that. But the very best riders, I would never, ever stand in the way of someone's ambition to be a world champion just because it means I've got one less rider for my racetrack. That's really, on the day I do that, I'm going to stop doing it because, it's morally wrong to try to stop somebody living out their dream and becoming world champion.
Yeah, that's true. And like I say, if you get someone like Alex Martin or Wilbur Hancock come over to Europe and they ride a season or two over here, you've got then the next junior rider taking their place. So it keeps the conveyor belt sort of rolling in a way. But like you said, a lot of the kids, especially like when you said about the missing generation, a lot of them stayed in the States who had talent. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head, but I remember, like they said, the early days of the Dream Team, you had 7 guys there and only one of them made it, which is kind of upsetting in a way because you think these kids have got talent, but because maybe like the thing is that the Californian lifestyle is their favorite lifestyle. They don't want to lose it or leave it, so they end up stop riding and going to normal life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's tough because American Speedway, they still do it up north at Fast Fridays, but American Speedway, its traditional race format is handicap racing and scratch racing, and it's straight knockout. You have a heat, and if you get through your heat, you go to the semi-finals and then the final. And scratch racing is all from the tapes, and handicap racing is 6 guys in a race. And you get assigned a handicap based on your abilities. So the fast guys start 50 yards back, and the slow guys start from the tapes, and the middle guys start somewhere in between. And they've stopped doing that down south, and I think it's a mistake because with handicap racing, you get riders that were never going to win the scratch program, but they had a chance to win the handicap program. But if they didn't, they had to get past, and it makes very exciting racing. So I think with these younger kids, there's only so many, the ones that don't really make it to the top, there's only so many times you can go out to race and keep coming third place. It gets your head down, and at some point you're spending all this money, you're thinking, wait a minute, I could be doing something else with that money. So they kind of fall out of interest and stop racing, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about the handicap racing down south, which I had Steve Lachero on back on episode 2 of these shows, and he was saying the exact same thing.
Okay. Yeah.
He was surprised that Southern California, because obviously he's the referee industry, he was surprised that all of a sudden Southern California had stopped doing handicap, had stopped doing it, for not sort of any rhyme or reason, and for someone like him to say that, again, he's like yourself, he wants to see the kids do well, he wants to see American Speedway back on top again, and he said that when he was riding, that the handicap was the best thing that he could do. And also I've had Sean McConnell on here as well, and he said that his forte was handicap racing, and he misses that sort of thing. So, it's a case of, it's something that's obviously, for some reason, obviously you probably know more than what I do, that it's just all of a sudden fallen off the schedule, which is such a shame.
Yeah, I think with the lay down bikes and how they're tuned these days, it's I think there's safety issues. I think some of the older riders that still race don't want to do it because it's more risky. And now the younger riders really haven't had to do it, and they're more in a comfort zone with scratch racing. I mean, the beauty with, I mean, with American Speedway, like Costa Mesa and Industry tend to run the exact same race format every week. You have 16 guys, you get 3 heats, score points, 8 go to the semis and the final. With me, because I think because of my British background, I always like to mix up my race formats. I never like to try and run the same thing 2 races in a row. So one race we'll do teams, then we'll do a pairs competition, then we'll do handicap, then we'll just do a regular all scratch program like the other tracks. And, you know, I'm always trying something different because, you know, I think we don't have the luxury of next week a different set of riders is coming from a different away team. It's going to be the same riders. So the way to keep it interesting is to mix up the race formats. And Speedway's got so many different race formats. It's pretty cool that you can just, you know, play around with them.
And also, I can imagine it's a good selling point as well to get the fans in. You say, oh, it's team racing this week, or it's handicap, whatever. I mean, when I first came to Paris, I rode Brock's bikes, and I was in the handicap meeting, and all I had was that, I think I had 2 laps of practice beforehand, just to sort of make sure. And I was out for heat 1. And of course, that first race is obviously you're on the line. You're on the line for the first one, and then after the meeting, you're then staggered on where you finish. Unfortunately, I wasn't sort of good enough. You know, I was always on the 10-yard line. I kept coming in third and things like that. But one of the races I think I had was Dylan Rummel and I think it was like Luke Becker or something like that. And they were behind me, and I was technically at the front. I think there was someone else behind me, and I managed to lead those 2 for pretty much a lap. And it was like, you know, you're buzzing because you're beating 2 good Americans. All right, okay, I'm on borrowed equipment, which was obviously thankful for Doug and Brock to let me use the equipment in the first place. But you know, it is such a buzz, and it's something that I think as a rider I thoroughly enjoyed. I wish I had done more of, was handicap racing. Obviously, the British tracks aren't really suited to handicap racing because obviously a lot of them are tight and not like Peterborough or Bellevue where you can fit more than 4 guys on the track. But it was such a thrill and things like that. And I mean, the one scalp I will take was that I managed to beat Charles Ermolenko, you know, on a handicap. So, you know, as for myself, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, former World Cup rider. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Okay, so he's at the very, very end of his career, but I'd still take that, you know,
yeah,
that sort of thing. But yeah, I think it's a shame. But I mean, I watch your program, I see it online, I see the scores come up anyway, and I'm always intrigued to see who does what. You know, I do try and keep as much tabs on it. I'm not quite like Mark Cochran who stays up all night and watches it. I can't do that. But
those guys are one of a kind. So yeah.
Very much so, but they're great guys. And again, it's a part of your support team that helped you out for so many years, you know, with everything.
Yeah, those guys are great. And what's really made the World Cup and the Dream Team what it is, you know, it's not so much the guys at the top that run it. It's the guys that really take up the work in England, you know, the whole, and that's the constant, you know, because riders come and go and teams change, but that foundation of the Cochrans, Fez, yourself, Mick Shepherd, the Feltham family, there's so many people that over the years gave so much to, there's probably plenty I'm missing out too, Andy Hale, you know, just Colin Wakeland, Johnny Walker, these are just people that they wrenched on bikes, Chris Strong, they drove vans, and they really, you know, these guys took 2 weeks off of work. You know, they could have gone on holiday somewhere. They could have gone to Tenerife, but instead they came on tour with us and kind of, you know, lived the dream. So that's pretty cool. And so, Lawrence Rogers, of course, say him last, he's probably done more than anyone is, you know. So, and plenty others because, you know, the people that rented us bikes, you know, the Cov Comp in Cradley Heath, which was our workshop, all of the fans that accommodated riders, guy called DJ Shag, rest in peace. He was a great asset. So, you know, I think it was the whole Dream Team thing and what evolved into the World Cup. It truly was a team activity with so many unsung heroes that really wouldn't want to be a hero. They just did it because they love Speedway, and that's the best part of it. It's, you know, it's not the money, it's not the, you know, it's that group that gets something good done.
Yeah, and I can only take your hat off to what you do on the admin side of it, but the fun side of it for myself now is obviously the mechanicking side. And again, going back to when you rode at Kent and Mildenhall, the guys and everything, you know, they were so talkative. Mechanics, everyone was helping everyone out. You know, we had our own toolboxes, we had our own spares. You know,
Yeah.
and of course, all it was a bike. You know, that someone like Dylan rode, or Brock. Well, obviously Brock had his own equipment, Gina had his own equipment, sort of thing. But you know, those sort of guys who are just coming over, who need the help and things like that. It's such a buzz, and I mean, it's so much fun because the guys don't, like I said before, they don't really care if they win, lose, draw, whatever. They're just here to have fun.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really good time. So we're very proud of that. And the good thing is, there's more good times to come. So stay tuned.
Oh yeah, and definitely count me in. I'll be there. You know, whatever it
Right.
needs. You know, because I've still got
Right.
bikes. I've still got rolling chassis. If I need anything to bolt an engine in, it's ready to go. So, you know, I'm
Right.
always gonna help if I can.
Cool. Thanks. Stand by.
Yeah, I'm on standby. but
Great.
all right, I must wrap this up, Steve, because obviously it's morning time
Okay.
over there for you guys. But
Yeah,
it's
I'm
been
going to buy a Christmas tree today. So that's the plan.
fingers crossed you can get one. You know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We know I can get one. So, yeah.
Yeah, go down to the local forest and just chop one down.
Exactly. Yeah. But thanks for having us on. It's a real pleasure to be invited, and hopefully the viewers find this a bit different and interesting.
Yeah, because the whole idea of the show is to get a different side of everything. You know, it's nice to have yourself on, because obviously people read what you put in the press and see what you see on Facebook, but to hear it from the horse's mouth, how you got into it and how your dream of everything is still going, is fascinating to hear.
Great. Yeah. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Right, before we say bye to Steve, I must say thank you for watching. Listen to this on Spotify, watch us on YouTube, like the group, join the group, share it to everybody. You know, get us out there, because these are getting really, really good and really interesting. I'm trying to work on getting some more American guys on. I can't really say too much because I'm waiting to get dates confirmed and everything else. But if you like Steve's chat, please check out Steve Bachiro and Sean McConnell's chats I've had before. I say, fingers crossed, we've got some current American riders coming on, as well as a couple of past American riders coming on. So fingers crossed we get some dates. But
Sounds good.
cheers, Steve. Thanks for everything, mate. It's been great
Thank you.
talking to you.
Likewise, I'll hopefully see you soon when all this nonsense is over.
Yeah, likewise, mate. Take care.
Great. Thanks. Okay. See ya.